Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We are talking about data analytics, big data analytics, and small data, and artificial intelligence trends. And we're getting ready to start priorities. And I'm going to go over to Kirsten first and ask for your top two priorities that you are focused on this year.
Hard to kind of whittle it down, but I guess in thinking about this question, I mean, it's really about technology enabling and governance maturity as probably the top two things right now. So in technology enabling, as I mentioned earlier, we're enabling our cloud analytics platform. We have a number of different technologies across the data value chain, and we need to make sure that they all work together effectively. So, basically that means that if we've modeled the data, I want to make sure that all of my various products, my business intelligence tool, my geospatial tool, my data science tools can all read off of that shared data model. I don't want to manage multiple data models across all these different tools, which then has impacts on data quality and things like that. So we want to ensure that we're continuing to enable the technologies. We want to make sure our community, we want to grow our community to make sure that we have the right data science training available to them. We have communities of practice to bring together those different communities that are specializing in the different areas around the data science space. And then in governance maturity, I mean, we really do need to, and this is, I would say, across the government, we're continuing to grow our data literacy and data acumen. We need to make sure the entire workforce understands how much data impacts their daily work, their daily lives. So we want to, we have to continue growing that through the governance maturity. We need to make sure that we have a solid understanding of what our authoritative trusted data is, where we have the certified data sets we can enable for self-service. Enabling analytics governance, I think, is a really important one. As we enable this self-service, we need to make sure that we have a clear path for all of these data scientists across our agencies to have a path towards production. So what does that analytics governance process look like so that we have the clear delivery pipelines established? People know how to move their cool data product, this cool thing they built, from a proof of concept to an initial operating capability to a full operating capability. And that when it gets there, anyone looking at that product knows that they can trust it because it was derived from some type of certified data set. We all know that it's a safe data set to use. It was the right one to use. We've defined what all of the elements mean, things like that. So those are the big focus areas that I've been looking at, in this next 1 to 2 years.
Laser focus. Thank you. Matt, top two priorities at state.
Pretty easy question. People and infrastructure.
Okay.
We have a number of hiring initiatives going on. It seems like at any given time, but certainly now we are interviewing data scientists, and we are preparing. We have announcements out on the street, and we are, classifying new positions. And that's not just for data scientists within the Center for Analytics. It's also data scientists across the entire department. We are also establishing bureau level chief data officers so that we don't just have a CDO at the department level, but bureau positions. So if you want to be the chief data officer of international security and non-proliferation, pretty cool job. Those kind of positions will be opening up in the coming year. And so I'm really excited about that. It's just an amazing mission to be a part of, and want great people to join the team. On infrastructure, we're partnering with the CIO's team focused on resourcing and directing more bureaus across the department toward enterprise analytics infrastructure. We've onboarded something like 80 offices across the department. We have 10 cloud analytics services available to the enterprise. So there's a lot of great work. There's more to do. That's for sure. There's more to do, but comes down to people and infrastructure at the end of the day, Luke.
Always more to do. It sounds like you've done quite a bit. Tom, how about at the Navy? Top two priorities for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first major priority is something I mentioned earlier, and that's the master data initiative. But that actually leads us into data cataloging that helps us know what data we have, where it is, who's responsible for maintaining it. And something we've recently added to that is what we call the terms of use of the data. And so we want to tag all of our data with appropriate set of metadata that tells us who can have access to it, what kind of legal restrictions there might be associated with the data, and any sort of statute things and what I could normally discretionary access sort of control on the data as well. And then that leads us directly into not only that information in the data catalog, but actually tagging the data to make that linkage, right? So that's a major initiative that we have ongoing right now that starts with that mastering of the data and the tagging of the data. And the other thing that we've just recently started, it's something that I tried to do about 2 years ago, and we just weren't mature enough in the platform and in our program to really get after it, but that's customer engagement. And that's really, and I think Kirsten mentioned it as well as Matt as well, it's really understanding who our customers are, understanding what their needs are, and sort of creating acumen programs and use programs tailored to their needs that allow them to maximize the time that they spend inside of our platform. And we've just started a number of training initiatives right now that are really focused on data scientists, which quite honestly, there's a lot of information out there to train data scientists. But when you have your basic digital citizen, an ensign who is just, come into the department or whatever, or a new Marine that has just landed, how do you get them to understand the value of data? How do you get them to understand whenever they're updating that maintenance record after, doing some sort of action on an aircraft, for example, understanding who's going to end up using that data and how that analytics applies. So we've stratified our workforce a little bit, and we're trying to create that tailored set of training. And so we're in this kind of existential debate right now about whether or not we have mandatory training or not around data. And so that's a little something that we need to get after. So I've actually been talking with the Federal CDO Council as well, and kind of how we can share some of the training initiatives we have ongoing right now. So I think it's an exciting time. It's really, that blossoming of that workforce combined with that data platform and the infrastructure, as Matt said, right, to really get after the use of the data for purposes that we've never been able to do in the past.
Two very important focus areas. Dr. Sim, top two priorities for you at CDC.
Very much like our other Fed partners, people and infrastructure. As it relates to infrastructure, like Thomas, we've already deployed an enterprise data catalog to enhance data discoverability. We're in the process of encouraging feedback from our centers to identify their high value data assets that can be cataloged in automated and more efficient ways. But by bringing them into the enterprise data analytics and visualization platform, having visibility about those high value data assets, and then going through the process that Kirsten mentioned in terms of the certification of those data assets so they become usable and less burdensome to manipulate by our customer base. So that's one aspect. The other infrastructure piece is part of DMI. It's an overarching strategy, which we're calling the North Star architecture. Within the North Star architecture is the development of building blocks, which are modular, reusable components of tools and services. One example of a building block is data exchange, which we often refer to as our front door, a single large pipe from our data providers and Stilt partners to better facilitate bidirectional data exchange and movement to and from CDC. So these are intended to support the public health infrastructure, reducing the variance and variability of multiple siloed implementations into standardized building blocks, which can help us be more efficient in sharing data, releasing data more effectively, as our director, Dr. Walensky, has really pushed for. So thanks.
Very important focus areas. Well, we're going to wrap it up here, and we always like to wrap it up with this last question. Let's sort of paint a picture of the future, right? What's it going to look like in 2 years from now? Howard, let's start with you at Databricks. What do you all have cooking over there? We talked about data lakes. We talked about data house. What's the demand signal look like 2 years from now?
One of the things that we see, and I think Tom brought it up earlier, is there's a lot of training out there for data scientists because it's all open source. Whether you're using TensorFlow or PyTorch or XGBoost, all of these algorithms are built in the open source domain. And so one of the priorities for Databricks has always been open source. We were the creators of Apache Spark, of MLflow, which is the lifecycle management for machine learning. workloads, our Delta file format, our Delta sharing capabilities, all of these things have been open sourced. And so we're going to continue to drive down that path, really focusing on open data. We want you to be able to put the data into a storage area and have other applications be able to read from it, because there's so much coming in the open source world that we don't want to lock the data in any particular way. So that's really something that we see coming down the pipe. The other thing, frankly, is just goes back to everything that all of our federal panelists have talked about, infrastructure and people. Well, on the infrastructure side, we have built Databricks so that today it's available in every single environment. So we have ATOs in FedRAMP High, in commercial clouds, in gov clouds. We even have Databricks ATO'd on IL6 platforms as well as on JWICs. So anywhere you want to run Databricks, and all of this comes from the fact that it's open by design. And these frameworks that we've delivered are downloaded literally 30 million times a month. So that talks about the popularity and the exposure that people can get to the Databricks technologies.
Keeping that innovation pipeline open, keeping that aperture open. I think that's fantastic. Nick, how about at Pure Storage? What are you all going to be focused on? What's that environment going to look like 2 years from now?
Well, our company mission has always been to empower innovators to build a better world with data. So we're going to be focusing on improving the performance, capacity, and efficiency of the data infrastructure to allow even better results. Now, what's that actually look like? We've doubled the capacity of our primary unstructured systems every year since their launch. So wow. 2 years from now, we're talking anywhere between a 5 and 10x increase in capacity, and the adoption of higher performance buses and network protocols is going to see an order of magnitude increase in network throughput. So the really fun part about this is we actually won't make the systems physically any bigger or consume any more electricity. So it'll be a really dramatic increase in performance, capacity, scalability, and a tremendous improvement in power efficiency at the same time.
A lot of great focus there. We really do appreciate it. Nicholas, how about at Snowflake? Incredible capability that technology brings to the table. What can we expect 2 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, I'll actually echo my industry friends here, Howard and Nick. I mean, getting access to the data that you need when you need it through industry open standards, putting that in great tools that allow you to use that data to understand, build insights, and build capabilities, that's incredibly important. And the industry has settled on these standards and has brought people in to make these standards stick. They're used in every industry, in every government agency, every private company. I learned by doing, Luke, and for me, it's the ability to try new things and not really take a risk of building an infrastructure just to try something new. For me, the vision is being able to embrace the power of pivot, bring in infrastructure. The joke I always make is the red shirts from Star Trek. I don't want to bring a bunch of stuff in that I have to put into racks and give names like Thor and Zeus. I want to throw a bunch of servers at a problem, see if it works, and if it doesn't, just kill them off because I don't care. That's the power the cloud gives us. That's the ability the cloud gives us. And I think that's the vision for the future, being able to try and experiment with new data types and new algorithms to build better benefits for citizens.
Matt, if I'm a freshly minted foreign service officer and I'm getting issued a device out in the field, what kind of capability am I going to have in 2 years? Am I going to be able to do some citizen analytical development? Am I going to be able to do it in a high side environment? What's the situation there?
I think the dream is to, you might be out running an errand and all of a sudden you have to sub in for a meeting with your counterpart in a foreign government. And you can pull up on your phone and see what the latest engagement was. You can see what their voting coincidence is on a particular topic within the UN environment. You can understand, talking about Alan, the commitments on vaccine donations is something that we're focused on a foreign policy level right now. Having that data readily available real time, and we can trust it day in and day out, is it a future that we aspire to and that we're well on our way to achieving.
Certainly looking forward to that. Dr. Sim, 2 years from now, what do you think you're going to be doing in regards to CDC and being able to proffer up some of that information that you've been talking about over the last?
Well, obviously on the technology side, maturing what I described previously in terms of the North Star architecture, the building blocks, the EDAP platform. But honestly, my goal is non-technical. It is really about culture change. It's about getting programs, organizational units that have worked largely independent over the years, and for good reason, to now come together to recognize that their epidemiologists, their best and brightest shouldn't be focused on building infrastructure per se, but they should be used on developing models, predictive models, being more proactive, applying the science, and then allowing the infrastructure activities to be more automated and streamlined. And so my focus over the next couple of years is to really help with the culture change, to really galvanize all areas of CDC and public health to focus on what's important, and then leverage technology appropriately to achieve the mission. Thanks.
Love the idea of having that North Star there, and then everyone's rallying around that, whether it be policy, technology, implementation, et cetera. Kirsten, you are on a tear over there. You've got a lot of different activity going on. Looks like you got a nice solid framework in place that you're building on. What is your goal? What is your aspiration 2 years from now? What do you expect to see as you walk in the door over there?
So much of it really is about in building the culture and the customer experience. I mean, we often talk in my team about sort of the three-legged stool of the capabilities and infrastructure, the data, and the people. And so we want to make sure that we're really streamlining that customer experience for the people. I mean, we're realizing that while data science is a specialty skill set, more and more people are emerging from college with that skill set. And so the idea that it is a small community of people doing it is kind of no longer true. Everyone has this skill set. I mean, I recently launched a data science program and 75 people raised their hand to participate. I rolled it out again, and now I'm over 100 people. Wow. And FERC only has 1,400 people. So, you know, we're hitting impressive. A lot of the workforce. So what that really tells me is we really need to be thoughtful about how we're creating that experience. So I often use this crazy cooking analogy where I want to make sure that our infrastructure provides that amazing kitchen for people to work from, that we have the perfect grocery store where people can go up and down the aisles and know exactly where to find the data, their ingredients that they need, that they know they're safe to eat, that it's reliable, it's authoritative, it's trusted, it's certified. And then they can bake amazing cakes as safely as possible. They can really be moved up the value chain and focus on really the cooking and what is the really great new cake that they can make. And then can we productionalize that cake? So I want to get them out of like hunting and gathering and trying to cook from camp stoves. And and then instead to make sure that they can bake, you know, an amazing cake. So it's really about that experience that we're thinking about.
That's a great analogy. You've got a lot of the panelists smiling, but I love the analogy there. And I think it's very relevant. Tom, if I am I know every Marine is a rifleman. I think that's what they say. And maybe they're a data scientist too, as Kirsten was pointing out. A couple of years from now, people coming out of the academy, et cetera, the men and women, what can you expect to see at the Department of Navy? What are you focused on over the next 2 years?
Yeah, absolutely. So we got a number of things in place right now that are starting to come to fruition. And I think probably over the next 2 years, well, I feel confident over the next 2 years that we are going to have that capability at Echelon, that we're going to be able to empower our customers and our users to have the data that they need, use the data that they need, and exploit the data that they need to create that operational advantage against our peer adversaries in a contested environment. And that's important, right? And so what we're really working on is bringing that tactical enterprise that is typically disadvantaged and disconnected, and maybe even operating in an austere environment together with that enterprise, right? Pushing analytics to the fringe. I know Nick and I have talked about this in the past, is really pushing that analytics as far down as possible and only bringing back what we need to bring back on the limited communication channels that we have, especially when we are in some sort of contested environment, right? And so that's going to be really important. And we have put the infrastructure into place now on both sides. Our challenge over the next year is just bridging that together, bringing together to empower our senior leaders at every echelon throughout the department, and really creating that operational advantage against our peer adversaries.
Sounds like a great place to focus your attention. I really appreciate all of the guests today taking the time out of your busy schedules and fighting the good fight, enabling the mission. We really do appreciate it. I'd like to thank all of our sponsors for supporting us on this show. I'd like to thank the good people here at Federal News Network that make our program so successful and enjoyable. And most of all, I'd like to thank you, the listening audience out there that tune in every month. You've been listening to the Federal Executive Forum on the Federal News Network.